Dreams are a window into your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the repository of every experience you've ever had. Your subconscious mind holds the key to the root causes of worries, anxieties, and whatever issues might be holding you back in your life. By engaging in the process of dream analysis, you can create desired change in your life. Two of the giants of traditional psychology and counseling, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, put great emphasis on the importance of dreams. However, their particular style of dream analysis positions the therapist as the expert in dream interpretation. However, I think there are no such experts in dream interpretation because each person's life experiences are unique. A person's dreams are unique to that person, and there really is a way to interpret the meaning of individual dreams without standardizing them. The job of the therapist, instead of interpreting a dream for a client, is to guide the individual into a process of interpreting his or her own dreams. The goal of the therapist, then, should be to teach the client a method or process that will accomplish this goal. One of the first things to know is that we dream in symbols. It is important to note that these symbols are not static. This is why it is not particularly helpful to search dream dictionaries for the meaning of the symbolism that appears in our dreams. The symbols of dreams are dynamic and always changing for each individual person. This is why no therapist can be an expert on what a dream means because of this dynamic nature of the symbols. There's no way that the therapist can automatically know what a particular dream symbol means. It is more important to be able to ask the appropriate questions of the dreamer so that he or she can understand the individual symbolic language of the dream. The language of dreams is a language of the right brain hemisphere of the brain. This is the part of the brain that responds to art, music, and patterns. It is the opposite of the analytical left brain. In society today, unfortunately, most emphasis is placed upon utilization of the left brain, and because of this, there's a lack of insight into symbol literacy. The language of dreams is different from the left brain language we use in reading, writing, and speaking. It is almost like a foreign language. This is why some dreams seem to have no logic and make no sense. In truth, like any foreign language, we must first translate the language and then decide the relative importance of the message that it contains. So, what happens during the dream state? One of the things that happens is that the mind cuts off the electrical impulses to the major muscle groups during dreaming. This is a protective mechanism and prevents the dreamer from thrashing about during a dream, which could cause harm to the physical body. It allows the dreamer to vent emotional content from the brain without any risk of injury to the physical body. REM is an abbreviation for rapid eye movement. Rapid eye movement often accompanies the dreaming state, and during this period the eyes begin to move rapidly, most of the time in a back and forth scanning motion. If a person is awakened during this stage of sleep, they are more likely to remember that they had been dreaming. Dreams can last as long as an hour, and nearly all people have 3 or 4 dreams during the night, whether or not they remember them. All people go through cycles in stages of sleep through the night. These stages total about 90 to 120 minutes in length. The average sleeper will experience 3 to 4 complete cycles per night. With each cycle, the dreamer will experience increasing amounts of REM activity. Barbiturates and most other sedatives suppress REM sleep. They suppress the activity of the brain and prevent the occurrence of the light sleep that often accompanies REM sleep. Alcohol also depresses neural activity, but affects sleep in a different way because it affects both light sleep or slow wave sleep and REM sleep, and both are reduced. The first cycle of sleep is approximately 1 to 2 hours in length. This is the stage of dreaming whereby the brain goes through all of the information that has been taken in during the awake hours. Our subconscious minds record everything even though we are not aware of it. Obviously, all of this information does not need to be retained. So during this stage of sleep, the brain goes through all of these files and determines which information will be kept and which will be discarded. It is like a processing and filtering stage. We call this stage of dreaming the wishful thinking stage. The next cycle of dreams takes place in the middle of the night. During this stage, the brain attempts to put together the pieces of the information that is retained, analyze it, and tries to predict what will happen in the dreamer's future. This is about 3 to 4 hours into the dream sleep state. The prediction is based upon the events that have taken place in the dreamer's past as well as what is going on currently in the dreamer's life. This stage of sleep is called the precognitive stage. This is a little bit different, however, from people who have psychic abilities and have precognitive dreams, where they dream about things that are going to be happening in the future and those things come to pass. I have those kinds of things happen to me on a fairly regular basis. And unfortunately for me, one of the things I seem to have a penchant for dreaming about is when people are going to pass away. And sometimes when I dream that people are going to pass away, it takes place relatively within a quick period of time and sometimes down the road. So what I'm talking about here in the precognitive state of dreaming is not the same as psychic people who are having precognitive dreams where they're literally predicting the future. The final stage of sleep is called the venting phase, and this is the stage that hypnotherapists are most interested in. This is a very significant stage of sleep because during this time the brain releases and vents out any anxieties, fears, and beliefs that are no longer needed. It's kind of like the brain is saying, I'm done with this now. I'm finished with this issue. This is why in hypnotherapy we encourage clients to have these venting dreams and to keep a notebook next to the bed so that upon waking they can take notes that detail the symbols, words, peoples, and events, places, etc. that have appeared in the venting dream. This is a key into the degree of progress the dreamer is making in releasing these key issues that are being worked upon in therapy. The venting stage of dreaming is a release mechanism. It does not predict, as I said, what will actually happen in waking life, so it's different from a psychic's precognitive dream. It is a healthy way for the brain to release what is no longer beneficial to the person. Reoccurring dreams occur when these venting dreams are not seen as unconscious loading, but are instead recognized as foreboding or random. A physiological stimulus can become incorporated into the content of a dream. This can happen when a dreamer experiences a physiological stimulus while engaged in the state of REM sleep. Because of the stimulus, it would not be correct then to make any psychological interpretation of a dream that is the result of such a physiological stimulus. There are several common sources of sleep disorders. These are enuresis or bedwetting, somnambulism, which is sleepwalking, night terrors, which is waking suddenly in a frightened state, and nightmares, which are bad dreams. The cause of these disorders has always been assumed to be caused by dreaming or accompanied by dreaming, but EEG and eye movement recordings have shown this to be a false assumption. All four of these disorders occur during rapid arousal from slow wave or light sleep. Any REM sleep or dreaming that occurs follows the end of the sleep disorder episode. The response of bedwetting may trigger a dream. Then, if the subject wakes up, he may have incorporated bedwetting into the content of the dream. Sleepwalking occurs during slow wave sleep. The subject is hard to wake during the episode and rarely is able to report a coherent dream. The sleep terror is common in children, but some adults experience these as well. The child or adult wakes up screaming and emotional as a response to something they imagine. Dream recall is rare and fragmented during these times. The nightmare is more common in adults. All the signs of heavy anxiety like sweating, trembling, and heavy breathing are present. If awakened, the person reports a terrifying situation like being suffocated or crushed rather than a sequence of events in a narrative dream. In hypnotherapy, we try to reinforce dream therapy each time we hypnotize a client. We give suggestions to the client while in hypnosis to experience dream sleep and deep sleep. We also give the clients questions to have venting dreams. It is very important to ask the client the appropriate questions when working on dream interpretation. And I'll tell you what some of these important questions are, so that if you decide to analyze your own dreams, you might want to have a notebook by the side of your bed so that when you wake up from a dream, you can think about the following questions that I might ask a client that I'm working with in hypnotherapy. So First of all, I would ask the client, which stage during the night did the dream occur? Was it the wishful thinking stage, which is the first stage of dreaming, whereby the brain is just kind of going through files and getting out all of the things that it doesn't need to retain? Or did it happen during the precognitive stage in the middle of the night? Or did it happen prior to waking up in the morning, which is the venting stage, because that is the time of the morning when the brain starts to vent out these issues that it has been working on. So that's the first thing I would ask a client, is what stage did the dream take place in? So you can note that down if you're analyzing your dreams. Second, I would ask the client to think about, was the dream psychological or physiological? So in other words, were there any physiological things that were going on that might have incorporated themselves into a dream that might then not be able to be interpreted as psychological? 3, what was the timing cue in the dream? So I would ask the client to think about the time period when this is occurring, and if they had any sense whether the dream was in slow motion or if it was happening rapidly, and that might be a clue to what is going on. 4, what is the content of the dream? And during this time, I would have the client think about separating the symbolic content from the literal content and to define the symbols. So oftentimes, for example, if a person is having a dream, let's say, for example, and their father repeatedly keeps appearing to them in the dream, well, it might not be actually the father that's appearing to them. Although if the person is very psychic, they could be experiencing a spiritual visitation if the father has passed away. But it's possible also that they need to think about, what does the father figure represent in their life? So if they're constantly having a dream about a father, they might want to look at, what does the father symbolize in their life? So does the father symbolize a father figure, a person who protects? Does the father figure represent something that's scary or terrifying? And so that's why we want to look at the symbols, and we want to look at who the people are. But oftentimes, again, the people represent things, and the objects that appear in the dream represent other things. So for example, another example of that would be if the person is dreaming about flying, that might indicate that they're going through some kind of a spiritual transformation, and their spiritual progress is moving upward, and they are moving up above the physical plane. Similarly, if they're having dreams about going underground all of the time, that might indicate something different. And then the 5th question I would ask would be, what are the emotional feelings of the dream? And so I would try to help the client figure out, well, when they woke up from the dream, did they feel sad? Did they feel happy, elated, excited, depressed? And try to help them figure out what was the emotional color or feeling of the dream. Another thing that might be important to think about is, what were the colors that appeared in the dream? Because colors also have symbolic meaning. Blue is a very emotional color and a very open color, where red symbolizes something very, very different. The 6th question I would ask them is, what is being vented out? So if they're dreaming about issues that their brain is working on during sleep time and trying to get rid of these issues, I would tell them that if they're having venting dreams that seem about the same issue all the time, it might be a sign that the brain is working on that during sleep and trying to vent those feelings and those emotions and those issues out, so that the person can be done with them and they can move on. And that is the reason why we encourage people to have venting dreams. And the last thing I would ask them to think about is, what triggered the dream? So to think about what might have brought this on. And then finally, how does this dream relate to what's going on presently in the person's life, and see if there can be some kind of insight made about how what they're dreaming about and what their brain is trying to release relates to something that they might be working on in their life at present.